between disasters. It comes and goes. The life of dreams is moving faster, and no one knows the constant fear of what comes after. We'll never know. It's weighing me down. Got my feet on the ground. Let's hide away from the lies and run away from the night. Let's run away. We're falling hard to find the answer.
Hey, what's up YouTube? Today is finally the day. It is finally the day to release the Vagina Fire Berserker guide. I mean Venom Gyre. Basically, Venom Gyre has been a long time coming and this guide has been a long time in the making. I have been testing out this build since the end of last week after seeing a YouTube video. And this skill really caught my eye out of all of the hundreds of thousands of skills out there. This skill stood out. It had the mechanics, it had the damage, and it had the fun playstyle. Only thing it didn't have was a nice MTX, but as you saw in the previous highlights, this build absolutely decimates any boss in the game, especially with name locking finally being fixed. So in this guide, we're going to go over everything you need to know to set up the character, every single piece of gear, how the skill tree works and everything, and how you set up PoE. But let's get straight into it and see what exactly is Venom Gyre. So before we get into Venom Gyre, we want to go over the pros and cons of the build. Insane late game shotgun potential. Berserk is fun. 100% Deli triple beyond viable with no headhunter. Tanky with Fortify. And Berserk DR. Very good map clear speed and crazy leech with life gain on hit, attacks per second, and returning blades. And returning blades means that you cannot be attacking and you'll still be able to leech because your blades are coming back to you. And the cons are, build has very expensive startup costs. The boots are 35x right now, but with the new Alch and Go methods, I truly believe that anyone can get 35 exalts. Some items are actively being price fixed higher, and you can get dizzy with whirling blades. So if you get motion sickness really easily, you might need to get a paper bag nearby just in case you throw up. And build needs levels before taking off. As with any attribute stacker, it is very, very hard to be able to start playing the build without all the levels, right? Because everything is so multiplicative and scaling. And you cannot level straight away with Venom Gyre. So the skill and build mechanics, this is a strength stacking build. I do know that in the past I have recommended Trinity and maybe even Poison. But strength stacking chaos damage on hit is the best archetype in my opinion. So this build requires the boots here. It requires the boots because the boots give you 1 to 80 chaos damage to attacks per 80 strength. And Venom Gyre is a projectile attack skill with returning projectiles dealing 25% damage, which all pierce. So when the projectiles go out, they don't all pierce. When they come back, they do all pierce. So that's why having like Awakened Fork is super, super important, or Sniper's Mark, because it creates more secondary projectiles that return to you, right? So the reason we want all of these returning projectiles is the returning projectiles can be caught and shot out in an outward spiral with whirling blades. So this is one of the few 2-button skills in the game where you have a secondary component that is triggered by whirling blades. And these projectiles that whirling blades shoot out, which you can hold up to 30 returning projectiles, these projectiles can shotgun because they shoot out sequentially and they don't count as one attack. So the reason being why this skill is so good is you can throw these out, right? And you see here, this is how many whirling blades you have, and you shoot it out. You can see it comes out in a little bit of a spiral. So if you're right on top of the boss, every single one of these projectiles can shotgun into the boss. And this is helped out with Tornado, which is on our cast on crit. So every single, projectile that goes into the tornado will chain back into the boss. Because Divergent Venom Gyre actually grants us +1 chain. So for the Ascendancy, we are going to be using Berserker, and we take Warbringer first, Aspect of Carnage, Flawless Savagery, Blitz Charges. And then our 5th Ascendancy is Undeniable, which is the Juggernaut node. This thing is very, very expensive, but you do not really need this. And I have done like Wave 30 Simulacrums without the 5th Ascendancy jewel. You can also try using Rite of Ruin, which is a lot of damage, or if you want to be really, really cheap, you can get Crave to Slaughter, which gives you some extra rage and plus 10 rage. So this is a very budget option, but best endgame option is definitely Undeniable. I think it's around 25% damage increase. And so Pantheons and Bandits, major Pantheon, we want to use Soul of Lunaris, which gives us physical damage reduction, elemental damage reduction, 10% chance to avoid projectiles and avoid chaining projectiles. Minor Pantheon, we want to use Soul of Yugo for reduced curse effect. And for this build, as with any attribute stacker, we want to kill all the bandits for the 2 extra passive points. So make sure to help Aramir. And now we want to go over the skill tree, and boy oh boy, this skill tree looks ridiculous, right? So let's look at the skill tree. So let's pull over the PoBs, right? So pull over the PoB. The PoB does have some finicky stuff that we will learn how to use and actually figure out how to actually set the PoB up in order to see the amount of damage that we actually have. So this is our damage currently. So if you look in the settings, you have Frenzy Charges because you have Anomalous Blood Rage. Endurance Charges is not really there. You do have Fortify from Whirling Blades. Fortified, Tailwind, you don't actually have. Elusive, you do have. Rage, you probably have 50. Consecrated Ground, sometimes. Crit recently, yes. So then you want to put Wither Stacks at 8, because that's how many you have Anomalous. And then Point Blank, Projectile Travel Distance right there. And then you want to manually type in this thing here because, oh, you can't see it. Mainly because you cannot see, the PoB does not do Battle Mage's Cry well, so you have to manually input this value. So let's go see exactly what the tree looks like. So the tree looks like we go out here. So we go up here to take Iron Will, which converts the strength damage bonus to spell damage as well. So instead of just melee physical damage, strength will also grant us bonus to spell damage. Then we take this jewel socket here because it's efficient and it's also some strength pathing on the side. Take these nodes here because this build does have problems with resist, even though we run Purity of Elements, and this gives us some extra Chaos res, and it also gives us +2 max res, which is really, really important. Now here we have the Attribute Mastery with percent strength. This is a Warcry buff effect cluster, which scales Battle Mage's Cry, and you'll be able to see why Battle Mage's Cry is so important later on. So over here, we take the Grace Reservation Efficiency for mana. And then this is Charisma, so we can run Grace, Purity of Elements, and Determination. So we go down this way. Now, a lot of people ask, why don't you just go like down this way right away? And the reason being is split personality depends on the travel path, right? So you want the longest travel path possible. So we come out here, we go down through here, travel all the way through here. So we're making this long loop-de-loop for split personality, which actually grants us an insane amount of damage, and dexterity for Magebane, which gives us spell suppression. So we do take these spell suppression nodes over here, which gives us 100% crit chance because we do have 100% spell suppression. And then we do take lethality because it gives us an extra amount of crit chance and multi. And it's, you can see we can barely cap out our crit. So any sort of crit is very, very important. And here, Point Blank, this is just a 30% more damage multiplier. And it helps because we will always be on top of the mob because we're going to be using Whirling Blades on top of the mob. So here we have large clusters. We do use 2 large clusters in the setup, and I did opt to use 1 Megalomaniac. So you basically, the point of these large clusters, you want Phantom Blaze, which gives you attack skills, fire, and an additional projectile. So it's pretty important. And overall, you can see the tree. You want to put the Lethal Pride here. Fury Bolts for some extra projectile speed, projectile damage. And make sure to get Mage Blade. And this is a pretty important cluster. And this cluster is something that you could probably drop, and it gives you attack damage per 16 strength as the attack mastery, and it gives you some extra rage and attack speed, which is always nice to see. And make sure to pick up Call to Arms because this actually makes our War Cries instant. So we're going to be using Battle Mage's Cry, and it'll make the Battle Mage's Cry instant. If you want to go more defensive, you can take 50 life and 10% increase maximum life, and maybe drop like these damage nodes over here or damage nodes over here. So it's a very wide open tree, and there's a lot of different cluster jewels and jewels that you can put in. So here you can see these are the two jewel sockets for dexterity transformed to strength here, inertia. And then here's another one here with inertia. So we use two of these. And then we use a Watcher's Eye. And then we have two split personalities in this cluster jewel down here for maximum travel distance. And then we have a Megalomaniac here. And then a Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh, which can be replaced with percent strength jewels like Emperor's Might, Emperor's Mastery, or Brawn. So now let's go see what unique jewels we'll be using. So for unique jewels, we'll be having Megalomaniac. We need Fan of Blades for extra projectile, and optional could be Lead by Example, which gives us Onslaught. So you can see here, Lead by Example, when you Warcry, you gain Onslaught, and you have plus 10 Strength and plus 10 Dex on it. So it's a perfect cluster or perfect Megalomaniac. Forbidden Flame and Flesh, you can choose to use Undeniable, which is the Juggernaut notable. This is very expensive, and there are other options like Blitz or Rite of Ruin. Split personality, you need strength and dex on it. Inertia, you want to try to get reservation efficiency and avoid stun implicits. So avoid stun implicits allows us to get 100% stun immunity. So this is pretty important to try to get jewels with these. And Watcher's Eye, you want to get Purity of Elements, Chaos Resist. This is pretty much mandatory, or you're going to be running with negative Chaos Res. Precision, attack speed, and multi is extremely strong. Grace, spell suppression, and dodge are really good defensive options. Lethal Pride, we want to be looking for Warcry buff effect, plus 20 flat strength, 5% strength, and 5% chance to deal double damage. Also, Intimidate is also extremely strong. So if you look at my Lethal Pride, I get 5% strength, 5% strength here, 5% strength, 8% Warcry buff effect, and then these are just throwaways. Also, getting Fire Res is extremely good too, because we do have some resist issues, as this build has a lot of uniques. Emperor's Mastery and Might are also really good, but they're very expensive lab jewels. I think Emperor's Mastery is actually like 40 or 50x. But for cluster jewels, you want to use a large cluster jewel only. And the cluster jewel is pretty expensive, but you can kind of cheap out by using two notables or using a 9 passive large cluster. So you can see here, we need Fan of Blades. This is the most important thing. It gives us an extra projectile to fire out. Other important secondary notables include Feed the Fury, Fuel to Fight, which is what you'll need for Mana Leech, Martial Prowess, Smite the Weak, and Heavy Hitter are all pretty good in terms of how much damage you get. So for this cluster, you can see here, this is a 2 notable cluster. You can see it's only 60 chaos, and you do waste a few extra points, but this cluster, like a perfect one, is probably like 20x at the moment. So you can still play the build if you use like a cheaper large cluster, and IDs are pretty common if you look on PoE trade, because a lot more people are looking out for them and trying to roll it. So that's how you are actually able to play this build or use clusters that are a lot cheaper, is using 2 notables, sacrificing some passive points, and yeah, make sure the only thing you really need to focus on is Fan of Blades. So now let's go over to skill links and see what exactly are the links for this build. So we have Divergent Venom Gyre, which is what you'll need for +1 chain. Awaken Void Manipulation is really good. Awaken Fork, Nightblade Support Gem, increased crit damage, increased crit strikes. For the main damage link, Cast 1 damage, Vault Molten Shell is what we'll need for our guard skill. So this is pretty important. Whirling Blades, Cast on Crit, Tornado, Fortify. You might be wondering, why do we actually use Fortify? Well, we use Fortify because nowadays our hit damage is so high on Whirling Blades. If you actually look at our Whirling Blades damage, it is, let's see here, 80,000. So this is enough damage to proc Fortify on bosses because it actually surpasses the threshold. Even on Simulacrum at like wave 30, you'll be getting around like 20 Fortify stacks pretty easily. Now Tornado is something we'll use because Tornado will cast every single time we use Whirling Blades. So every single time we use Whirling Blades, we'll be making a new Tornado, which will help us shotgun all of the projectiles into the boss with +1 chain. So for our auras, totems, and buffs, our buffs we mainly use Berserk, Phantasmal Ancestral Protector Totem, Anomalous Withering Step, which grants us additional Wither debuffs for the alternate quality, Anomalous Blood Rage, which grants us Frenzy Charge on hit, so Battle Mage's Cry, and then this is how we trigger our mark, with Sniper's Mark and Mark on hit. And our auras, we have Purity of Elements, Enlighten, Grace, and Determination. Now, something you could do if you want more damage, because we do have 1 spare link in this setup, and we can link Withering Step, Ancestral Protector, and Berserk to level 4 Enhanced. This would give us the most damage. Another option is to maybe use Anomalous Blood and Sand for more projectile speed, Or if you can make the reservation efficiency work and you have a lower mana cost on your skill, you can also try out using Defiance Banner, which should actually give you an insane survivability boost. So you can choose what you want to do with the last link, whether you want more damage, whether you want more survivability, or you want more clear. So here's the important part, which is the gameplay and how to play. So the gameplay for this build, if you are used to Lightning Strike, is actually a lot more simple. So what we have is we put Battle Mage's Cry on left click to generate rage. We spam Withering Step on cooldown to reset Elusive. But Withering Step also has a dual purpose in this build, in that Withering Step inflicts Wither debuffs on the boss, so that actually makes them take more chaos damage. So we want to make sure to use the Withering Step when we're next to the boss. And we use Whirling Blades for our single target and movement. So this is really good. It doubles as both our single target ability and our movement skill. So for mapping, you want to press Berserk when you're high on rage, and you can pretty much maintain pretty high Berserk uptime while mapping. For single target, you want to always make sure you place down your Ancestral Protector Totem and pop Berserk. And make sure to use the Withering Step next to the boss to inflict Wither debuffs. Now you want to make sure to use Name Locking for Whirling Blades for a huge single target. Now, a lot of people ask what exactly is name locking. So name locking, in order to do it, you have to make sure it's not on always attack without moving. So what name locking does is it makes you go back and forth between a mob, and all you need to do is you need to hover over the mob and you need to hold down Whirling Blades, and you'll go back and forth on the target. So let's see if we could actually demonstrate it in Blood Aqueducts. I don't think the mobs have enough HP, but basically you can see what happens when you do name lock. You just go back and forth between the target. You can't really see it. Yeah, see right there, you can see it goes back and forth. If it was a mob, if you one-shot it, then you won't go back and forth. But basically, you hold it down, and then it'll go back and forth. But you have to make sure it's on always attack without moving. Otherwise, it will not work. Let's go back to our hideout real fast. So for Battle Mage's Cry, it's on our left click. When we Battle Mage's Cry, we'll get max rage because of our Red Blade banner. And then Withering Step, we want to press it on cooldown. And we want to make sure we're next to the boss. And then we can press Berserk when we need to do a single target. And a lot of people have been wondering, why do you even need Battle Mage's Cry? Just look at our damage. Our damage, once the Battle Mage's Cry debuff runs out, is 250k. With Battle Mage's Cry pressed and Berserk is 2.8 million. So it's over 13 times damage increase. So if you don't press Battle Mage's Cry and you don't press Berserk, and you don't have your totem down, it's going to be doing a lot less damage. So let's do it again with the totem. Where's the totem? With the totem down, Battle Mage's Cry and Berserk, 3.4 million. And without anything up, it is 280 or 50k, right? So make sure to do this. Make sure to use Name Lock, or you're going to be having some single target problems. And you want to press Vol Molten Shell and Grace when in trouble or anticipating damage. If you're doing Simulacrums, this is very important to press these, and then you'll pretty much be invincible for like 5 or 6 seconds, and then you can kill Kosis or some stuff. So defenses for the build, you're running Determination, Grace, and Purity of Elements, which makes you ailment immune. You have 100% spell suppression. Elusive is a huge defensive layer and gives around 40% chance to avoid all damage at the top end. Actually, this build doesn't get as much as this because we don't have that high of an elusive. But we mainly have life gain on hit recovery with our claw implicit. The build has around like 50 to 60% evasion with 75% block. So this is some layered defenses along with elusive that makes us incredibly hard to hit with melee attacks. So frequently asked questions, how to fix mana issues is the #1 question in the world I always get. You can fix mana issues by getting Field of Fight notable on your cluster jewel. So you can see here, you need this mod, attack damage leech as mana. And it's very important. If you do not have this mod, you will not be able to leech mana. Another thing you can do to help out mana is to make sure you have these non-channeling skills have -7 to mana cost craft. And if you really are hurting on mana, you can use Replica Conqueror's Efficiency also. So if you use this, let's just put it here for now. Our mana cost is 2, right? So you can actually pretty much spam the skill infinitely and help preload on bosses, right? So that's how you fix the mana cost, minus mana cost, and Replica Conqueror's Efficiency, and Field of Fight before you do that, right? So why Battle Mage's Cry? Battle Mage's Cry grants us 150% of spell damage as attack damage that scales with Warcry effect. So if you look in here, our Battle Mage's Cry has 63% increased buff effect from the tree nodes here. So this is why we take the tree nodes. So what this means is that 150% gets multiplied by 1.63, which gives us around 250%. So 250% of our spell damage is essentially attack damage, right? And then we also get a bunch of spell damage from our strength from Iron Will, and this thing boosts the amount of spell damage we get from strength, right? Because this converts the melee physical damage into spell damage with Iron Will. So that's why we need Battle Mage's Cry so badly. And why do I deal no damage? Like I said before, you forgot to press Battle Mage's Cry and you're not utilizing name locking along with Withering Step, right? So make sure to press Battle Mage's Cry, make sure to press Berserk, and make sure to utilize name locking. So now we're in the fun section of the build guide, which is all of the items. So Red Blade Banner is used for maximum power for Warcry. So it grants us the maximum effect for Battle Mage's Cry, and this is pretty important too because Battle Mage's Cry has a long cooldown of 8 seconds and not like General's Cry. So this shield is actually mandatory if we're intending to use Battle Mage's Cry, right? And you can also get corrupted implicit with crit reduction. So if you can see my shield here, I have reduced extra damage from crit strikes. So pretty important. Warcries have infinite power is the main thing we want from the shield. So helmet and enchantment. So there's two different types of helmets you can use. There's the budget option, which is Crown of Eyes, which means that we don't need to use Battle Mage's Cry. So you can see Crown of Eyes is pretty much the same thing as Battle Mage's Cry, except it doesn't get scaled by Warcry buff effect. But that does make it so that we can have higher Berserk uptime because we can use General's Cry instead of Battle Mage's Cry, which is a 4-second cooldown. The best enchant is Venom Gyre, has 25% chance to keep caught projectiles fired by using Whirling Blades, or Battle Mage's Cry buff effect on a rare helm. So Endgame Helmet has elevated accuracy and crit strength Warlord mod, along with minus chaos resistance Hunter mod, and it's made by Awakened Orbing the two elevated bases together. So this helmet is super good because it gives us nearly capped crit, and it gives us accuracy rating. And if you don't use this helm, you will have huge accuracy and you'll have huge hit chance problems. So if you can see here, we take off this helm, we go all the way down to 74% crit, and that's a huge problem. I think with the undeniable node, it's a lot easier to get 100% chance to hit though. So that part is not as important anymore. And negative chaos res is one of the biggest damage increases that you can possibly have for any chaos damage build. So amulet, again, we have a budget option and an endgame option. Best budget option is Ascendancy, that just gives you like 130 to all attributes. And best endgame option is Eyes of the Great Wolf or a rare amulet. The rare amulet is extremely expensive and pretty much will require 100 plus exalts to craft. So Eyes of the Great Wolf is relatively more affordable. You can get percent attributes. It goes all the way up to 32%. The best secondary attributes are probably crit multi, spell damage. Those are the two best. Then you have chaos damage, percent attack damage, and a regular percent damage. And then the rare amulet that if you want to go super, super expensive, you can do percent attributes, percent strength, flat strength, and then you reforge influence to get 1% damage per 16 strength on the prefix. So the anoint we will want for this amulet is Whispers of Doom, which grants us an extra curse for despair. Like I said, minus chaos res is super important, so that's why we want to prioritize the despair curse. The Iron Fortress is pretty much the only chest we could use. It's relatively affordable. It makes strength damage bonus grant 1.5% melee physical damage per 5 strength instead of 1%. This means the Iron Will convert this all to spell damage. And the spell damage converts to attack damage with Battle Mage's Cry. So that's why this chest is so important. This chest also grants us max block. Because if you look at the chest in game, it grants us 1% chance to block attack damage per 50 strength. So with my synth belt on, I actually have 72% block. So you can see here, this chest is extremely important for survivability and damage. Now you do need, I think it is 4 greens and 2 blues on this chest, which means you'll want to use spam blue and green on harvest, or you can use TFT harvest color reforges to get the colors you need. So you can do change non-green to green. And then once you get all greens, you can do 2 change non-blues to blues, and you'll be done, and you'll be able to get 4 greens, 2 blues. So for rings, they're pretty simple. You want to use rare rings with strength and max resist. So you can see here, we just strength and maximum res on the rings. These rings might be a little bit expensive because of everyone playing omniscience builds. And you might also need intelligence on one of your rings. So I did get a T1 intelligence roll on one of the rings, because I was short a little bit of int to be able to use all of my gear. Now, most important thing on these rings, you want to make sure both rings have the craft of non-channeling skills have -7 to mana cost. You can see here both these rings have that craft. So for the claw is a pretty big problem that people have, and there are a lot of ways to go about obtaining the claw, but the best way to make the best claw is to just get a fracture attack speed, crit chance, or crit multi base, and then you spam woe essences and you use a veiled chaos orb with prefixes cannot be changed when you have 2 open prefix slots to get chaos penetration. And once you get chaos penetration, you can aug chaos to get flat chaos damage. This is the only chaos mod possible on the prefix. And then you want to craft on crit chance or crit multi, and you buy all crit for the last mod. So you can see here, I crafted on crit chance and strength and int, and I bought all crit and got lucky and hit the T1 crit multi roll. So the claw does not need to be perfect, as I finished wave 30 Simulacrum with a Mortem Morsu. So if you want to go with something just super easy, you can pretty much just look for something with high crit chance, high multi, high attack speed, craft on Chaos Pen, and you should be good to go. You don't really need the spell damage or the flat chaos damage. Just want to make sure the claw has fast attack speed, high crit chance. You don't even really need crit multi, right? So you can get this claw pretty easily. You can spam woe essences until you see you hit either attack speed and crit chance, and then you can just craft on Chaos Pen for the last mod. So you can make a really cheap one, or you can go full out and go for a fractured attack speed base. For belt, the best endgame option is Headhunter or Strength Synth Implicit Belt. The Strength Synth Implicit Belt is actually relatively affordable for some reason. So you want to focus on Essence Strength roll. So this here has an Essence Strength roll, and then you want to make sure you have Attribute Catalyst on both the ring actually and the belts. So Synth Implicit Belt is like 20% more damage on single target than Headhunter, but Headhunter is pretty much unbeatable for mapping, right? For the belt enchant, you want to get the Wither 6% resistances, minus resist. The minus resist does apply to Chaos Res. So for this belt, you pretty much just want Strength, Life, Chaos Res as possible, and some resist. Pretty simple stuff, and is not too crazy for the budget. Boots, the only option is Replica Alberon's Warpath. This boots is actually build enabling. So let's go see how much this pair of boots costs, right? So this pair of boots is actually the problem for this build, because this pair of boots was price fixed pretty high. It was like 20x or 25x not too long ago. So you can see it's 39x. So that's pretty much the whole cost of the build, or whole upfront cost. So you cannot play the build without these boots, unfortunately. And there is no budget option. The best enchant is attack and cast speed if you killed recently. Now, even though like 40x is a lot, with all of the out and go methods in the game, it should be a lot easier for people to obtain, as long as you play like a few or 3 to 4 hours a day, right? You'll be able to get it sooner or later. It does give you something to grind towards. Gloves, best endgame option. You want rare gloves with spell suppression, attack speed, and strength. You do need the spell suppression roll in order to cap out your spell suppression on the gloves. So you want to go with T1 strength, and you can get any sort of attack speed. You can also skimp out on attack speed and go for a resist roll if you feel like you're having trouble capping out your res. Eldritch Implicits, I think the best are probably attack speed and chance to suppress spell damage. If you are capped out on spell damage, there is a percent damage per 100 strength mod, which is pretty good. And it's probably the best damage for the Eldritch mod that you could possibly have. So next up, we have the Flasks. Flasks, you're using Dying Sun, Bottle of Faith, and Witchfire Brew. Witchfire Brew is pretty much used in order to get the Despair Curse, and it's pretty nice because it gives us a level 21 Despair. Dying Sun is used for the extra projectiles, and Bottle of Faith is used for the crit chance and the Consecrated Ground. Now, Utility Flask, you have two options. You can use a Granite Flask or Amethyst Flask. You switch out the Amethyst Flask for a Diamond Flask if you don't need capped Chaos Res. The only reason I use Amethyst Flask is because I wanted to have as close to as 75% Chaos Res as possible while doing Simulacrum, because I wanted to level in Simulacrum, so I didn't want to die. So prefixes for Utility Flask, you want percent chance to gain flash charge when you deal critical strike. Suffixes for the Utility Flask, you want percent attack speed, percent armor, or less defective curses. So you can see here for my flask, I have percent armor here, and I have percent attack speed as the suffixes. And then these Witchfire Brew, Dying Sun, and Bottle of Faith. So next up, let's see what conclusions we have for the build, because now you guys pretty much know everything about this build. So This is probably the best build I've played in years. Last build I can probably compare to this in terms of how it felt for clear and single target is probably Winter Orb or Stacker, which is quite a long time ago. It's one of the few builds that can get 7 rewards in Simulacrum and consistently 6 rewards in Simulacrum. Spark is another one that is really, really good in Simulacrum. I do think that Spark and Venom Gyre are the best Simulacrum farmers currently. I did also level from 98 to 100 in only Simulacrums. So you do know that this build is fairly tanky. It is not exactly a glass cannon build. Build also has extremely high upfront startup costs. You can't get around the cost of the boots, but the performance is really unmatched after the initial investment. So once you get like the basic pieces, you get Replica Alberon's Warpath, you get Ascendancy, you get 2 rare rings of strength, you get a 6-link Iron Fortress, you get Crown of Eyes, you use some random claw, you Red Blade Banner, and you should be pretty much set. You buy some cheap clusters, you'll be good to go. You can do all the content in the game, but you do have to fork over the initial cost of the boots, right? And in the end, it's a near infinite scaling build as it is an attribute stacker. Attribute stackers always scale super, super well and have infinite scaling, right? So that's why int stackers always do so much damage in the end. So this is pretty much Venom Gyre. It was in its shell before, and now you can see it is probably one of the best builds of Archnemesis League if you can fork over the cost. So you can see here, this is you doing some calculations on the calculator to see how many exalts you'll need. So it's roughly 658,000 exalts to min-max the build. But hopefully this has helped out everyone. I do know a lot of people were wondering about this build. And for leveling, you can't really level as the build. You probably have to play Hollow Palm, get some 5-way carries, get to level 93 or so, low 90s, and then you can swap over, right? So let me know down in the comments down below if you intend to play it. And if you want me to make a currency making guide for how you can farm like 40x in a relatively short amount of time, because I do believe that this league does have a very good currency floor for currency generation and that anyone can farm the currency as long as they commit to some out and go methods, right? But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more mirrors, exalts, and base bloods than me, and see you next time. Bye.